I am 79 years old, and I built a career that people respected, but I neglected the family that needed me. There isn't a dramatic way to say that. It's just the truth. At this age, most of what's left is the truth. I wake up early now, even though there's nowhere to be. My body still keeps the hours of a working man. 5:30, sometimes 5. For 40 years I woke up at that time to get ready for the office. Now I sit at the edge of the bed and listen to the quiet in the house. It's too quiet for a house that once held children. My wife passed 3 winters ago. The house didn't just grow quiet then. It became hollow. I moved through it carefully, as if the walls might remember more than I do. When you're 79, you understand that most of your decisions are behind you. You don't get to revise them. You only get to sit with them. I tell myself I did what I thought was right. I believed in providing. I believed in stability. I believed that a man's job was to build something solid so his family wouldn't have to worry. I did build something solid. I just wasn't inside it very much. In my 20s, I was ambitious in a way that felt necessary. I grew up watching my father struggle. He worked with his hands until his back bent and his patience thinned. There was never enough money, never enough rest. I promised myself I wouldn't live that way. When I got my first real position at a firm in the city, I felt like I had been handed a door out of that life. I wore suits that were slightly too big. I stayed late, not because anyone asked me to, but because I wanted to be seen. I met my wife around that time. She was steady in a way I wasn't. She listened more than she talked. She believed in me before I had proven anything. When we had our first child, a daughter, I remember holding her in the hospital room. She was small and red-faced and loud. I remember thinking, I have to make sure she never struggles the way we did. That thought became my compass. It sounds honorable. It felt honorable. What I didn't understand was how narrow that compass was. In my 30s, the company began to grow. I was offered more responsibility, more travel, bigger clients. I said yes to all of it. I told myself it was temporary, just a few busy years, just until we were comfortable. Comfort keeps moving. I missed my daughter's first school play because I was in another state negotiating a contract. I sent flowers to the house and called that evening. My wife put the phone to our daughter's ear. She was excited, talking fast, telling me about her costume. I told her I was proud of her. I was proud, but I wasn't there. That became a pattern I didn't see forming. There were dinners I missed because a client wanted to talk numbers. There were weekends I spent at the office preparing presentations that no one now remembers. There were vacations shortened because something urgent came up. There is always something urgent at work. It never runs out. At home, things were quieter. My wife handled most of it. School forms, doctor appointments, homework, parent-teacher meetings. I told myself we had an understanding. She was better with those details. I was better at bringing in money. We were a team. She never complained loudly. That was part of the problem. Sometimes, late at night, when I came home and loosened my tie in the hallway, she would be sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread out, or a cup of tea gone cold. She would say, "You missed dinner again." Not angrily, just stating it. I know, I would say. It won't always be like this. It was like that for a very long time. When our son was born, I was already deep into my career. I remember less of his early years than I should. I remember the day we moved into a larger house. I remember the promotion that came with a corner office. I remember the first time my name was printed in a trade magazine. I struggle to remember the sound of my son's laugh when he was 5. That's how memory works when you feed it certain things and starve it of others. In my 40s, I reached what I had aimed for. Executive title, respect, a salary that made my younger self feel vindicated. People shook my hand and said I was a success. At home, my daughter had become a teenager. She had stopped telling me small things. I assumed that was normal. Teenagers pull away. One evening I tried to give her advice about college choices. She listened politely, then said, "Dad, you don't really know what I like." She wasn't being cruel. She was being accurate. I realized I didn't know the names of her closest friends. I didn't know which subjects she dreaded. I didn't know the music she played in her room with the door closed. I knew the quarterly reports by heart. My son started playing baseball. I attended a few games in the beginning. I stood near the fence in my work clothes, checking my watch between innings. Eventually, I stopped going. There was always a meeting, always a dinner with clients. My wife would send me pictures from the stands. He stopped asking if I was coming. The distance didn't arrive all at once. It came in small allowances. I would think, I'll make it up to them next month. I'll take them somewhere special. I'll slow down after this project. But each project led to another. Each responsibility justified the next. There's a strange comfort in being needed at work. The phone rings. Decisions depend on you. Problems arrive and you solve them. It gives you a clear shape. At home, needs are softer. They don't announce themselves with urgency. A child wanting you to watch them practice something. A wife wanting you to sit and listen without glancing at your watch. Those needs can wait, you think, until they don't. My daughter left for college without much ceremony. I drove her there, helped carry boxes into a small dorm room. We stood awkwardly for a moment before I left. I remember wanting to say something meaningful. I told her to study hard. She hugged me. It felt brief. On the drive home, I realized I had more memories of business trips than of her childhood. My son followed a few years later. He chose a university out of state. I told people I was proud he was independent. He rarely called. By the time I reached my 50s, the house had become quiet during the day. My wife and I moved through it like careful tenants. We had built this life together, but we had spent so many years functioning around my schedule that we weren't sure how to sit in the same room without it. She had her routines: gardening, book clubs, volunteering. I had the office. When I finally began to slow down at work, it wasn't a choice. The company merged. Younger men with sharper edges took over departments. I was offered a respectable retirement package. I accepted it with dignity. The first Monday, I didn't have to wake up early felt like a victory. By Wednesday, I felt misplaced. I tried to reinsert myself into the house. I offered to fix things, to cook, to reorganize the garage. My wife smiled, but there was a gentleness in her that I hadn't noticed before, as if she had learned to live without expecting much from me in certain ways. One evening, sitting across from her at the dinner table, I asked, "Were you lonely?" She looked at me for a long moment. "Sometimes," she said, "but I knew you were doing what you thought you had to do." That sentence has stayed with me more than any praise I ever received. What you think you have to do can cost you what you actually need. The moment of irreversibility came quietly. It wasn't a dramatic argument or a sudden departure. It was a hospital room. My wife had been feeling tired for months. We both blamed age. By the time we understood it was something serious, it had already spread. I sat beside her bed as machines hummed softly. The same hands that had managed our entire home rested thin and still on the blanket. I tried to fill the silence with stories about our early years, about the apartment we first rented, about the children when they were small. She listened, eyes half closed. "I wish I had been home more," I said. The words felt clumsy. She squeezed my hand. "I know," she said, not accusatory, not forgiving, just acknowledging. There are apologies that come too late to change anything. They exist only as recognition. After she was gone, the house felt larger than it ever had. I walked through rooms that had once been full of noise and realized how little of it I had absorbed. My daughter visits occasionally. She has her own children now. When she sits at my table, she checks her phone between conversations. I recognize the habit. My son calls on Sundays most weeks. Our conversations are polite. We discuss weather, health, his work. There is affection, but it is measured. I am not the center of their memories. I am a figure at the edge of them. That is what is permanently lost. Not love. They love me in their way. What is lost is the easy familiarity, the shared history of small moments, the inside jokes, the comfort of having been there. You cannot go back and attend a recital that happened 40 years ago. You cannot sit in the bleachers after the field has been repainted a dozen times. You cannot replay dinners you skipped. Tom does not keep copies. I used to believe that achievement would echo, that the work I did would matter beyond my own lifespan. The company I gave my best years to changed names twice. The projects I obsessed over were replaced. My office was renovated. My files were archived and then deleted. Nothing there carries my imprint. The only place it might have mattered was here, in this house, and I was often elsewhere. If you're listening to me and you're younger, I won't tell you what to do. I don't have the authority for that. I can only tell you what I misunderstood. I thought there would be a later. Later to attend more games. Later to sit longer at the dinner table. Later to ask my children real questions and wait for the answers. Later is a quiet assumption. It feels safe. It isn't. You can build a career with discipline and focus. I did. It requires sacrifice. What I didn't see was that I was choosing what to sacrifice without fully understanding the cost. Success filled the hours. It did not fill the spaces afterward. Now my days are simple. I water the plants my wife once cared for. I make coffee for one. I look at photographs and try to remember the context behind the smiles. Sometimes I sit in the living room in the late afternoon when the light comes in through the same window it always has. I can almost hear the echo of children running down the hallway. Almost. I am 79 years old. I don't have decades left to adjust the balance. If I could sit across from my younger self, I wouldn't scold him. He was earnest. He was afraid of failing his family the way his father had struggled. I would just tell him this. Providing is not the same as being present. I learned that slowly, and then all at once. There is gratitude in me. I am grateful I had work. Grateful I had a wife who stayed. Grateful my children still answer the phone. But gratitude does not erase absence. In the evenings, when the house settles and the air cools, I sometimes speak aloud to my wife as if she were in the next room. I tell her about the garden, about the grandchildren. I try to remember the sound of her laugh when I first made her smile. I am not looking for redemption. At 79, you understand that life is not a story that wraps itself neatly. It is a series of choices made with limited understanding. This is mine. I built something people admired, and I neglected the people who needed me to simply sit down and stay. Now I sit, and I stay, and the quiet answers back.